This week, OWW Radio is pleased to welcome one of the most memorable heels of the late 80s and early 90s. Former AWA Heavyweight Champion, WWE Tag Team Champion, WCW Television Champion, and yes, model. Wrestling legend Rick Martel. Rick, bienvenue, OWW Radio.
Well, thank you, Nick. I'm very happy to be on the program with you. OWW Radio, and it's great to be talking to the fans also.
Thank you very much for coming on. Rick, you broke into wrestling in 1972, coming from a wrestling family. How were you treated in the locker room? Did the boys take it a little easier on you because you were from a wrestling family?
No, I don't think so. Of course, it always helps, but I think I earned the respect by what I did in the ring, in my attitude, even though I was only 17 years old, respect was always important for me, respect to the other guy. And I think it was kind of a mutual.
I have a question from our executive producer, Corey Maurer, who is Canadian, by the way. I remember when he was young, talking about you, and he saw a clip of you in Quebec, indie territory, where you smashed a beer bottle over your head to imitate an opponent. This left quite a lasting impression on him, and he's asking, is one of the reasons, he's saying, was the regular stunt for you early in your career or just one-time occasion was this stunt? Well,
the beer bottle is funny enough. I was with Roddy Piper in Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii, and I was going to wrestle a guy, in fact, from New Brunswick called The Beast, and I was going to wrestle him in a cage match. Mm-hmm. So Roddy and I are watching him, the promo for the match, and all of a sudden we see him with the beer bottle, So, well, what is he going to do with that? He goes and smash the beer bottles in his forehead, and the blood and all the beer all over, and we're going there. Right. And I went, wow, man, that's impressive, Uh-huh. And a few months later, him and I were roommates in Oregon. Roddy and I were roommates, and so one night after, I guess I have to admit, after years, we said, hey, why don't we try that, So we went outside, by the garbage can, and we both had a bottle, okay, ready, go, and boom, and we smashed a beer bottle on our forehead and say, hey, that's all right, Yeah. Not that, so he did it a couple of weeks later in Oregon, and me, I did it the 2 years later in Montreal.
Well, it certainly left a lasting impression on Corey. He still remembers it to this day, man.
Yeah. I guess everybody was kind of, shocked by what happened, especially my friends when they saw that. They thought I was crazy.
Yeah. Now, you wrestled all over the world throughout the 70s. One territory you wrestled in early in your career was in New Zealand for the promoter Steve Rickard. Can you share some memories wrestling in New Zealand?
Yeah, in fact, that was in 1977. I met this wrestler, Mark Lewin, in Atlanta, Georgia, and he in touch with, he told Steve Rickard about it. He called me up, and then a brother from Australia heard I was going to New Zealand, and he called me also, asked if I was interested in going to Australia. Well, so I used to wrestle in the weekends in Australia and during the week in New Zealand. I'd done both countries, and I loved it there. Especially, I had a long feud against Curtis Ayakea, and I learned a lot when I was there. I wrestled against them several months, and had a really nice experience. I love New Zealand.
You were also teamed with Tony Garea in New Zealand before returning to the WWF in the 80s. How different was it wrestling together in New Zealand than you reunited in the WWF?
Well, I met Tony in the States, and of course we hit it right away because I knew about his country. I had met his brother in New Zealand and all that, so we had a lot about right off the start. So, and we really got close, Tony and I. in 1978, I lost my brother, Michel, who was wrestling in Puerto Rico, and he died after a wrestling match, half an hour after his wrestling match on the way to the hospital, and you know, I was like 22 years old at the time, and my brother had a 12-year difference with like my big brother. You know, he was my idol, my best friend, and everything. You know, and so I met Tony 2 years later. So I guess he kind of was I wouldn't say replaced, but he filled the void that I had lost in a way, and he became like a big brother to me. You know, and still to this day, we're still close. We call each other once in a while and see each other. He came visit me 2 months ago, and so that was a great relationship that came about.
How is wrestling in New Zealand compared to here in the States? You don't hear much about professional wrestling in New Zealand, or at least I don't. How is it there?
Well, it's different. First of all, it was in rounds. You used to do 8-minute rounds, 6-minute rounds, and so that was different. It was like little matches. You had to do a lot of different psychology than wrestling in the States or wherever. The round system was not easy to work with.
So it was more like a boxing match or a MMA fight?
Yeah, exactly. You had like a couple of minutes, a minute, one between the rounds, and it was kind of tough after that. You had to redo again, but the fans were so great over there. Though the reaction used to be really great, so it made it.
I see. What are your memories of your first WWF stint in the early '80s? And what are some of your memories of winning the WWF Tag Team titles with Tony Garea?
Could you repeat the question, Nick, please?
What are some of your memories of your first WWF stint in the early '80s?
Oh, well, first of all, I have to say that for Vince McMahon Sr., who I, to this day in my book was the best promoter I've wrestled for. He was a great man, and he was a man that lived by his word, and so he was really nice person, and so I loved it there. The atmosphere was great. The guys, all the guys got along great, and of course, from big cities, Philly, New York, Boston, and so on, and so I really enjoyed my time there, and also, I was traveling a lot with, with Tony Garea, and a really fantastic time, and I was there for a couple of years, and those are some of the best things I've had to this day.
Now, what led you to the AWA after your stint with the WWF?
Well, when I was in Honolulu, Hawaii, wrestling there, I'd wrestled Nick a couple of times, and I wrestled him one time for an hour, and after that, wrestled him again, where we went really long again, and so I guess a few people had saw the matches from the AWA. They were quite impressed with it, with what I had, the way I wrestled, and so they mentioned it to Vern, and he eventually needed a baby face. They had a spot, so he got in touch with me while I was in WWF and offered me to go to the AWA for a while. So I at the time, the AWA, was like one of the best territories to go, where guys weren't traveling that much, making some really great money. And so right away I said, yeah, sure. I'd been in WWF for a couple of years, and time for me to change, so I accepted right away and went over to the AWA.
How did the McManagement, as I call them, how did they feel towards your leaving WWF though?
Well, that was kind of strange because usually they told the guys, hey, look, it's over, maybe we couldn't send you at such and such, so he kind of, took him by surprise when I told him, look, I'd like to leave because, I was doing well, but that was exactly it. I didn't want to leave I didn't want to wait. I was doing not so well to leave. I wanted to leave while it was great, and I would return someday and return where I left it.
That's a good point. A lot of people stay around, stick around way too long, and they're not on top anymore. They're leaving when they're more toward the bottom. You left when you're on top, and came back even better than you left. More with Rick the Model Martel here on OWW Radio when we come back. 888-357-9876, option 2, radio at onlineworldofwrestling.com. More with the Model when we come back. 888-357-9876, 888-357-9876, option 2, radio at onlineworldofwrestling.com. Nick Anthony, Aaron Kendrick, joined with Rick the Model Martel, and a legend in professional wrestling. He's here on OWW Radio. Rick, we've been talking about your AWA career as well as WWF. Now, you became a household name with the AWA wrestling as a headliner all over the world, especially in Japan. Now, can you share some of the memories wrestling in Japan?
In Japan?
Yep.
Yeah, well, the first time I was there was 1976 with my brother, and only 20 years old, and I loved it right away. Even though in Japan it's kind of hard because the wrestling style is different, and the reaction of the people is, they're really quiet, and at the end they clap for whoever wins, and the ring is really hard, in fact, a couple of years ago, when I was with WWE at the Night of Champions, I did an appearance there that night. Ric Flair was there, and I had wrestled while I was AWA champion. So Ric Flair, and he was NWA champion, and we remind each other that night about the reaction we had. Very surprised. We had a great reaction in Tokyo, when we wrestled against each other. Very strange to get that kind of reaction, but we were quite pleased. But anyway, after I won the AWA championship, I beat Jumbo Tsuruta, who was one of the top stars at the time in Japan. Right away, after I defend my title, I could tell, the difference, the reaction of the people, the respect I got there, and I really enjoyed Japan. I had been there several times, and I loved it there.
What was your initial reaction when you found out that you'd be winning the AWA World Title from Jumbo Tsuruta at the age of 29? Did I pronounce that right, by the way?
Excuse me?
Did I pronounce that right, Tsuruta?
Yeah, Jumbo Tsuruta.
Tsuruta, okay.
And, I had left the AWA. I was back in Montreal, in Quebec, wrestling for international wrestling. I was getting ready to go to a few other places, in fact, Japan, and then I got a call from Vern Gagne, and Nick Bockwinkel told me that they want to talk to me. They had something to propose to me, and so I did go, and they told me about their plans with the championship, Jumbo, and so I accepted right away. The match was made, and I went there in May of 1984, and it was great, But I remember that night where the St. Paul Civic Center, where I won the match. Jumbo, of course, didn't speak much English and didn't speak any French at all, so
right.
So it's kind of hard to to communicate in the ring, and the people, they were used to style here in the United States, American style, so to see a Japanese match in the States. But, we made the best of it, and, when I won the match, it felt great. It's, I have to say, it's the best night of my life, of my career, remember always. With
the Japanese style of professional wrestling so different, was it hard trying to keep up? You said the communication, that aspect was difficult, but was the wrestling style different to comprehend and get over with Jumbo?
Yeah, it was hard because, first people in Minneapolis didn't know who Jumbo was, so
right.
he couldn't get any reaction, and getting his heat or getting the crowd reaction of some kind. And also I would notice that I lost the belt to Stan Hansen, who was a big star in Japan, the biggest star in Japan, and he was used to that style, that non-stop action, non-stop, where there's no stop for reaction of the people. You just keep going and going and going, and I wrestled him. He was used to wrestling this way, and
yeah,
it's quite an adjustment for me.
Do you think that world title loss to Hansen hurt your career?
No, I think so. In fact, somebody was mentioning not long ago about it, and no, I think I decided to do it this way because I was thinking more of, I've always been this way. My goal is not about thinking about the glory. It's what's good for the wrestling business, and I think I wanted to give Stan a shot possible to get over as a world champion, and I said, yeah, let's do it this way. So put some credibility to the belt, the world belt, and instead of being some kind of DQ kind of match, where I said, no, let's do it fair and square, and
right.
And I don't think it's well because people. We had done this angle where my back was injured, and doctors told me not to wrestle that night, and we played that angle where I shouldn't wrestle in the first place, but I went ahead for the fans, and it worked out pretty good. I never felt it hurt me at all.
Now, I'm not gonna lie, I'm one of the fans of yours that only saw you in the WWF. Do you think, such as myself, a lot of fans missed out on some of your better work by not being able to see you in the AWA?
Well, yeah. Well, my career, was. I feel the best years of my career was from 1977 on to 1991. That's were my greatest in professional wrestling because. In '91, after the match against Jake the Snake, I had, I started doing, get involved in the business, in the real estate business. I bought some days commercial and residential, and then I took almost a year off in '91, and when I came back, I was 50% wrestler and 50% businessman, but I needed the money, to pursue my business and all that. So I took, it's a choice that I made, and it was okay because I didn't want to. I wanted to be ready for my second career. I had given a lot to wrestling from 1973 to '91, so now it was time to think about for myself a little bit.
What led you back to the WWE?
Well, I came back in '92. Said I needed money to invest more in the business that I was, and so I did. I came back for a couple of years, and then in '96, in '97, to WCW. Now my business was working good. I had some good in place, and I was ready to come back to wrestling at 100% now, So I went to meet Vince McMahon, the possibility of returning to WWE with Don Callis, a guy from Winnipeg, and supposed to come back as the supermodels. And we had talked about the different ways of doing it, but I guess they didn't want to give me a yearly contract, just a 3-month contract, just to see how we were going to do. And at this point, I explained to Don that, after these years I'd been in wrestling, I was not ready to prove myself. I want a yearly contract. So I went and met with Eric Bischoff.
Oh, yeah. Now,
so I did. I met with them, and they offered me a year, for 2 years, and it was great. Really happy, and but unfortunately, I was 42 years old at the time, and I got injured a couple of times, and I've been in the wrestling 25 years, so it was time for me to quit.
Being a former AWA world champion, did you feel that being brought back in as a tag team wrestler was the wrong move?
No, because I enjoyed tag team wrestling. I think tag team wrestling is very exciting, and it's a lot of fun. And also sometimes it can be easier on the body because if sometimes you're not injured, if you're injured, I mean, you can go and wrestle. You can go and wrestle. That night that your partner takes over.
Right.
But I like both.
888-357-9876, option 2, Rick the Model Martel. Rick, when we come back, Wrestlemania 3 is on my mind. We'll talk more about it when we come back. 888-357-9876. Rick the Model Martel here on OWW Radio.
OWW Radio.
All right, where do you go to find downloadable professional wrestling on demand? One site, clickwrestle.com. Whether it's male or female, mixed, you want some free videos, wrestlers, and the catalogs that follow, clickwrestle.com. Featuring wrestling matches involving Claudio Castagnoli, Art Cannon, Cheerleader Melissa, American Dragon, Daphne, Chris Hero, and many more. ClickWrestle.com matches are now only $2.95 the purchase. $2.95. You can't go wrong with $2.95. Just log on to www.clickwrestle.com.
I'm Al Snow, former WWE superstar, tough enough trainer, and just all-around gadabout. When I want to talk or I want to listen to someone else talk, I go to wildtalkradio.com.
Do you have a business that you are looking to take online but have no idea what an HTML or JPEG is? Do you currently have a website that is in need of an overhaul? Or do you have a website that needs updating but you don't have the time to do so? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then you need to check out wtrproductions.tk, where you can get quality web design and management at an affordable rate. Looking to get the lowdown on all the services we offer? Then shoot us off an email by checking out our contact section so that we can help you get started building your online home. WTR Productions. High quality work for an affordable rate. Built the way you want. Located at www.wtrproductions.tk.
OWW Radio at 888-357-9876, option 2. Nick Anthony, Aaron Kendrick. On the line with us is our guest, Rick the Model Martel, a professional wrestler, legend in the industry. I worked with AWA, WCW, WWE. He's a model, real estate professional. And he's joining us here on OWW Radio. Before we went to a break, Rick, I mentioned WrestleMania 3. And what are your memories of wrestling the first match at this WrestleMania, teaming with Tom Zink?
It was great.
You faced off with Don Morocco and Cowboy Bob Orton. How was it?
It's great. I remember... wrestling that night. First of all, we got into before, we got in the day before, and we went in that building. We knew it was sold out a few weeks ahead before that day. So we knew seats that we were looking at were going to be filled the next day.
Right.
And it was an unbelievable feeling, and I remember, we were there. It was Tom and I were opening up the match, and of course there was a lot of pressure on us because you want something like that to start on the right note, and it was, I guess, one of the first events, where was on a national level where everybody, was aware of the match Andre the Giant against Hulk Hogan, and to start that event was like some kind of an honor,
Absolutely, man. How was it with Don Morocco and Cowboy Bob Orton?
Oh, these two guys are the ultimate pros, Don Morocco and Bob Orton. I have tremendous respect for those two wrestlers, and I'd wrestled against them in the past. I'd been wrestle Don Morocco in Australia, New Zealand. We were there for a while, where I met him there, and I always enjoyed wrestling him, and also enjoyed him as a person outside the ring.
What are some of your fondest memories, or some of the memories you have wrestling with Tito Santana against the Hart Foundation and winning WWF Tag Team titles from them? I mean, the Hart Foundation, yeah?
Well, Tito is a great, a great partner, here's a guy that, after having that deal with Tom Zank, teaming up with Tito was a great guy. We used to wrestle where we'd go in the ring, him and I, and it was whoever was in there. We didn't say, oh, well, you did more than I did, and it was, look, let's go in there and let's get the best match of the night, and let's give 100% so people enjoy themselves, and that was it. That's the only way we were thinking, and I like his style. He had a kind of similar style to mine, and
right.
I enjoyed wrestling him in tag team, but I also enjoyed very much wrestling against him, in a single match.
Single competition, exactly. Let me go back a little bit to WrestleMania III when Hogan slammed Andre the Giant. Did you remain in the arena at that time?
Oh yeah, I made sure I was there, and I made sure also we had some TV sets in the dressing room, where you could watch what was going on in the ring. But I made sure I went out of the dressing room and I went in the alley where I could see the match live,
Wow.
And because these two guys were friends of mine, I had been sharing an apartment with Hulk for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Andre being French, we always traveled together.
Right.
So of course, these two guys, and I knew it was kind of a special match because it was like the changing of the guards. Up to that point, Andre was always the ultimate attraction in wrestling, and now Hulk. Andre was aware that Hulk was going to be the man. He was going to be the it. In wrestling. So at first, Andre didn't like the idea, and then he did. He realized that it was time to move on. It was time to have another superstar. And they ended up having a great match. And I remember I was there when he slammed him. The reaction, unreal. I never seen or heard a reaction like that ever. It was fantastic to be there and to be part of this whole thing.
Wow. It is probably one of the most memorable, actions that I can remember, and I will forever remember it.
Yeah, because, to me it was the meaning behind this match that was impressive, what it meant. And like I said, it was like a new era was starting, with, as we know, what Hulk did for wrestling, and it was like to be a witness of that, the birth of this era.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of great WrestleMania moments, and you are in quite a few of them. That blindfold match was phenomenal. You and Jake.
Excuse me, Nick?
I said there were a lot of WrestleMania memories that I will remember forever, and you are in a lot of them. That match with Jake the Snake, the blindfold match, that was phenomenal.
Yeah, Jake is another wrestler that I have great respect for. I mean, he was one of a kind, that. And he had that character, the snakes down to a T. And, here's a guy that did great promos and great, ring psychology. And I wrestled him, a few weeks every night prior to the WrestleMania. And that blindfold, I never wrestled a blindfold match before. So I asked for a blindfold a month prior to the WrestleMania, so I could get the feel of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we did one in West Palm Beach, Florida, and it's kind of hard because you couldn't see very well. And
yeah.
But we managed to get a match out of it. I was pretty pleased with the results. And but with Jake, you couldn't do no wrong. I mean, he was such a great wrestler.
We had Tito Santana on the show last year. When the topic of your split came up, Tito said that he was pushing for the heel turn while you stay as a babyface. Do you think your singles run that followed your tag team split would have been different had you stayed a face and Santana made the heel turn?
Well, at that point, I'll tell you, I didn't want to be any more babyface. I had been a babyface for 15 years, and it was time for me to get a new challenge. To get another, I was tired, and it turned out to be good because as a model, I got to be a lot of fun for me, and more. I was able to get the interview, be more creative and. So it gave me the opportunity to experiment a lot of things that I'd seen and I was able to because let's face it, a heel is a lot more I wouldn't say exciting, but there's a lot more you can do than being a babyface.
A lot more you can get away with, more entertaining.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just,
of course.
Yeah.
And the interviews, you can play with it, have fun, and especially during those years, I'm not sure now, what is a babyface and what is a heel, it may be different now, but especially in those days, in the 80s, it was quite different. It was like more of a black and white,
right.
The babyface, you wore the white and then the heel wore the black, that type of thing. It's like in the movies.
Right. Yeah, today you don't know which is which. It's more, I guess, personality is what we mentioned last week.
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah. Now, this model gimmick was perhaps one of the most unorthodox, but also one of the most memorable heel personas of the late 80s, man, and the early 90s. How did you feel at the time about the character? Did it play out the way you had envisioned it?
No, well, in fact, J.J. Dillon and Vince gave me the character, the model, and they came up with it, and my first reaction was one of, what am I going to do with that, and then I started thinking about it, and then the creative juices started flowing, and I came up, with a few ideas, amongst, the arrogance and the perfume and all these different ideas. So I felt great doing it, and I loved it. It made me expand my career, and I feel even to this day, that I had to do this move, and I'm happy with the way it turned out.
Why did your manager wrestler relationship with Slick end?
Yeah, Well, Slick, they gave me, at first Slick as a manager, and I like Slick. A really nice man, and but professionally, I didn't think, he belonged in my corner. I wanted to, I thought he was taken away from my character, and in the interviews, and also in the ring, so I asked Vince, if I could go it alone, and he accepted right away.
Well, in professional wrestling, there are a handful of valets or managers. Don't you see Slick as one of the top ones in the industry? At that time, yeah.
Yeah, he's very good, and like I said, I have a lot of respect for him. But to me, I say that the best manager ever is Bobby Heenan, Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Right.
This guy, I saw him in the AWA, and the way, the heat that he got in these interviews, and what a quick mind, he'd be there and had a quick response right away, and he was fantastic. He entertained me for a long time.
Do you think the lack of managers in today's industry hurts the industry as a whole?
Well, it's hard nowadays to make any judgments on why and what's wrong or what's right, and today it's different days, different times. People are used to seeing a lot of, it's like the movies, it's like comparing a movie that was done in the 70s or the 80s to a movie that's done now, the different technology and all that stuff, and people have seen a lot of things that in those years they never seen. So it's hard to, it's different, and that's all. I saw the last WrestleMania, in Florida, and I was impressed. I don't watch much wrestling anymore, but I made sure I watched this one, and I have a lot of respect for the guys now. They risk their bodies to make sure people enjoy it, and but I make no judgments. Those are different times, and that's all.
Okay. Well, the Royal Rumble is coming up, and you lasted a thin record 53 minutes, man, in 91,
yeah.
Which is quite a feat. Do you enjoy the Rumble concept?
Yeah, I enjoyed watching it, but being in it, it's a very tiring match. Anytime I would rather wrestle in a match 50 minutes than being in a Royal Rumble 50 minutes. I mean, it's more tiring because you never have you always have a guy left or right or from behind that comes into and it's
right.
Very dangerous for injuries also because you don't know what's coming or who's coming from where, and so it's pretty tiring. And but I was really happy the way it went in '91, and I was pretty proud of this.
You mentioned that you don't watch much professional wrestling nowadays. Do you know some of the guys of today? Do you have a prediction or a winner for this year?
No, like I said, I don't watch much of it, and I'm just I don't know why, because wrestling is still in my blood. I will always love wrestling, and I guess it's because I was part of it, and you see it, you kind of, you wish you were there again, and I don't know what exactly the reason, but in no means, because I think wrestling is great now. Guys are doing some great things, but like I said, I guess I get to see the WrestleMania. I make a point to still go see every WrestleMania.
Right. Do they fly you in? Do they hook you up?
No, they don't. I meant to like last time I went to this movie theater with my nephew. He's a big wrestling fan, and we went together to see it at this closed circuit. From a movie
theater. Right. Okay. I'm sure you remember Tatanka. What are your memories of this match, Tatanka? I liked him. He, of course, he was kind of new in the wrestling, and I guess they put me against him to kind of show him a few things. Like I said, I at that point, my role as a teacher, wrestling has given me a lot to that point, and I was ready to
give back also. So if I met Tatanka a few years ago, and he was really he was very thankful, for what we realized that I helped him a lot, showed him a few things, and he was very respectful, and I liked him, as a guy, and I thought, that character, the Indian gimmick, fit him great. He did good with it, but he's I like to wrestle him. I thought it was all right.
Between 93 and 95, did you get any offers to go to WCW? Were you interested in going there?
No, not at all. I like I said, I wasn't at that point. You were
done, huh?
I don't think I was at my top. As a wrestler, I wasn't concentrating on the wrestling. Like I said, I was just there. To do the best under the circumstances that was at the time for me, because to be a top wrestler, you have to be there. You have to be at it 100%. And you can't be side step by any other anything in your life. You have to concentrate 100%, and which I wasn't doing up to that point from 92 on. So I paid the price. I had to wrestle at a lower level, because I was used always to wrestle, at a higher level of competition, and but I accepted it. It was my choice. It was okay.
All right. More with the model, Rick Martel, when we come back. One more segment with you, Rick, when we come back. 888-357-9876, option 2, radio at onlineworldofwrestling.com. Be right back.
OWW Radio.
All right, Online World of Wrestling is proud to present its official forum, OWW Genesis, the gold standard of wrestling forums. OWW Genesis hosts over 50 active forums, which include news, results, the WWE section, TNA, ROH, independent and international discussion, women's wrestling, 8 video forums, OWW forum games, MMA, wrestling video games, and wrestling interests. You want more? Okay, Genesis also has forums dedicated to wrestling promotions of the past, ECW, WCW, and the golden age of professional wrestling. More? Okay, Genesis has more to offer its community with a variety of special features such as OWW Undisputed, Debate League, Bloodfest, All Time Polls, What If, Fair or Foul, even a E-Fed called Takedown. More? Okay, OWW Genesis is also proud to be the official community forum for Chick Fights and OWW Radio. More? Okay, you'll find me there, Nick Anthony, and all the producers and many others right there at Online World of Wrestling's official forum, OWW Genesis. It's the gold standard of wrestling forums. It's the gold standard! Okay, that one hurt it. The model Martel, 888-357-9876, option 2, radio at onlineworldofwrestling.com. Nick Anthony, Aaron Kidrick here on OWW Radio. We're talking to Rick the Model Martel, legendary professional wrestler with several promotions under his belt, most known for his AWA years and also WWF years in professional wrestling. Rick, in a shoot interview you had with RF Video, you said that you and Don Callis were set to return to the WWF as the Supermodels in '97. You also mentioned it earlier in the conversation. Callis would eventually turn on you, which would have made you a babyface for the first time in 8 years in the WWF. However, due to a pay dispute you had with Vince McMahon, you went to WCW. Had you and Vince McMahon came to an agreement, where would you have seen yourself in the WWF? As a European title contender against the British Bulldog, IC title contender against Owen Hart, or even The Rock, or a WWF title contender against Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels? Where would you see yourself if you had stayed with the WWF at that time?
Well, it's hard to speculate on that, but Of course, doing that supermodels, I think it would have got over great, because the idea of it, me coming back with a younger guy, and the long hair and all that, he would have been, turning on me eventually. I think that would have got over pretty good, and and they had, like you said, the name you just mentioned, those are great names.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think this opportunity, Nick, to mention that, even though on this contract dispute we didn't see eye to eye, Vince McMahon and myself,
Mm-hmm.
I have nothing but respect for Vince McMahon Jr., because I came from 1970, early 70s, so I saw before WWF became what it is today.
Right.
I saw how the wrestlers lived at that time. We used to go territories to regional territories, from regional territories.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't save, we didn't make that great amount of money, and if you were lucky, you made a bit, and then Vince McMahon came to the scene, and then the money became much greater, and we were able to live at one place, and fly from there, and at least our family, our wives, were able to have some kind of normal life,
Right.
And so I credit him for that. Vince McMahon, he changed the wrestling business for the better, I say, as far as we're concerned, the wrestlers, and I think the fans also benefited from it.
Absolutely.
And because I heard in the past, people were kind of criticizing him, but as far as I'm concerned, I praise what he's done for wrestling.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, and to tell the truth, to be honest, Bret Hart feels the same. We talked with Bret Hart a couple of months back, and he said the exact same thing. We all know some of the feelings that he has for Vince McMahon. I mean, we don't know deep feelings that he has for him, but he did come out and say, I respect the man. Look what he's done for me, and I'm completely grateful for what he's made me into and what he's done for me, and that's respectable to hear from you as well as Bret Hart.
Yeah, and also I seen him under a lot of. I respect him as a businessman. In fact, in my business, when certain times, hard times came, and I always thought about him, saying, hey, look, this guy, man, he was always cool. I'd never seen Vince McMahon raise his voice or lose his cool, I think I admire him as a businessman. I can tell you that.
All right. How do you feel about the current state of WWE, TNA, and the competition between the two? Now, we're just talking about the competition between WWE and TNA. How do you feel about this?
Well, I think it's great. I think the winner here are the fans, because they're going to upgrade whatever they were doing, the different promotions, WWE and TNA, and I think competition is healthy. You have to have competition, and I think they're going to better themselves to make sure they win this race. Mm-hmm. So the fans they benefit from it. I think it's fantastic.
The indie scene. You watch much of the indie scenes, like ROH, Shakara, any of those promotions?
Could you repeat, please?
What about the independent scenes, the indie scenes, the indie promotions out there? You watch any of those, like ROH?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. This is from RickTheModel.Martel.com. Martel reappeared in World Championship Wrestling in 1997, feuding with Booker T for the WCW World Television Championship, which he won on February 16, 1998. Martel's comeback was cut short when at Super Brawl 8, he landed badly during his match with Booker T, hitting his leg on one of the steel cables that WCW used as ring ropes. He tore an inside ligament of his right knee, fractured his leg, and suffered cartilage damage, effectively ending his in-ring career. This may be a difficult question, even after all this, but how hard was it to see your storied career end on such a somber note?
Well, I was just thankful at the time that my career, like I said, I've been 25 years in wrestling. So, had I been a young man starting wrestling and having this injury, that would have been horrible, But I thought, I at that point, I said, well, maybe it's time for me to hang my boots, and Booker T, I respect him. He's a great guy, and him and his brother, Stevie Ray, I have a lot of respect for those two guys, but, they were just starting then, and, they didn't have much experience, and, but I, like I said also, I've been wrestling 25 years, so it was time for me to quit. So I listened to the signs, and I did, and, very thankful for the career I had, and also my stint in the WCW, and I had a great time, but like you said, I wish I could have ended up on a different note.
Right. Were there ever any complaints issued about the ring after this?
No, I don't think so. In fact, I remember, Nick, my very first day at WCW, it was in Atlanta. We were filming that night on a Monday, and I remember in the afternoon, Razor Ramon came to get me in the dressing room. He says, "Rick, come here." He says, "Follow me." He says, "Where do you want to go?" "Look, let's go to the ring. I just want to show you something." So we went there. There was nobody in the building, and he says, "Look, get in the ring." I said, "What are you talking about?" Get in the ring, get the feel of it. You'll see how different it is, And sure enough, he says, "Run to the ropes," and I ran to the ropes, and I couldn't believe how hard they were, and how small the ring was, and I was very grateful to him because I wouldn't have wanted to find that out on a live match,
Yeah, no kidding.
So I knew what to expect when I stepped in that ring that night. So I thanked him a lot. Razor, by the way, is really a good person, and I liked him a lot. In the AWA, we trained together in the gym, and so it was really nice of him to warn me about that ring.
That's a great story about Scott Hall. I mean, you don't hear that many great stories about Scott Hall, but that's absolutely one of the great ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I like him. He's I like to wrestle him also. When I wrestled him in Raw, for the we had done a battle royal, and we were gonna wrestle for the Intercontinental, and I liked him. I think he was a great character. That character like Scarface and all that. I think he did it great.
Absolutely. Yeah, he was one of the favorites during that time, man. Razor Ramon.
Oh yeah, he was great.
And who can forget that ladder match he and Sean had?
Oh yeah. And also, Sean, who's a great talent. I remember in '92 when we wrestled against each other in London, that SummerSlam. Prior to him becoming a heel, Sean came to me and asked if he could travel with me a little bit to pick my brains about being a heel, and we traveled together a couple of times, and we made discussions about his views and mine about being a heel, and then eventually, we wrestled against each other in London, and after the match, he came and thanked me, and when he got his payoff, it was his first big payoff he's ever had, and that was the beginning, of a great career. I mean, of a great career as a heel, because he had done some great things as a babyface, but as a heel now, I have tremendous respect for him. I always liked him as a guy and also as a wrestler.
Some of the best baby faces become some of the best heels character. You agree with that?
Yeah, I think so, because when you're a heel, I mean a babyface, you always say, oh well, I'd like my heel, to do this and to do that, or so when you do become a heel, then all these years of frustration where you know, you say, oh, I wish you would have done this, would have done that. Now you have the opportunity to do it and to experiment. And yeah, you're right, Nick. A lot of good heels were baby faces before.
Do some of these guys stay in contact with you? You stay in contact with them? How does that work? Are you in contact with the WWE still?
No, not anymore. You know, the only person that I'm in contact with now is Tony Garea. You know, and also the Lanny Poffo, the genius. You know, we call each other once in a while, and he's a very good friend of mine. And other than that, is another thing I love to do. Even though I only do 2 or 3 a year, you know, and at the max, I could do it more, but. You know, I'm busy with my business, and it's those fan festivals.
Oh, yeah.
You know, where you go and for the weekend and a different place in New York or wherever, and you go and sign autographs, and those are great because it gives me the opportunity to see the fans again, and then we spend a weekend with the guys that I wrestled with for, you know, years ago, and it's I enjoy that. I really enjoy those weekends, and I'm looking forward to the next one I'm doing.
I'm sure you've heard of the Cauliflower Alley Club. Any interest in that, or are you a member of it?
Well, definitely. In fact, you know, like I said, Tony Garea was here at my home a couple of months ago, and we discussed that we might go this year, you know, because I'd like to see all those guys, you know, at least a couple of times, you know, the next couple of years. So I might go this year.
Well, I hope to see you there. I'm a member as well, and I hope I get to meet you in person and see you there.
All right.
All right, man.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Cool. Rick the Model Martel joining us here on OWW Radio. Rick, I want to thank you so very much for coming on with us this evening, and I hope we can talk again down the line.
Yeah, I hope so too, Nick. And please, you know, you and Corey do a tremendous job, and you know, I have a lot of respect for you know, what you do, and you're you know you're the kind of guy that studied it, and when you talk about wrestling, you know, I have a lot of respect for what you say and your opinions, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so very much. Rick the Model Martel. Oh, one quick thing, Rick. The fragrance that you had in the in the spray bottle there, what was that in there, man?
Well, I'll tell you a funny thing. You mentioned that, Nick. You know, we had some perfume at the beginning, and we went to New York to try to find a kind of recipe for it, and we're going to market it, and Vince, we're going to have it in the magazine, you know, like in the fashion magazine where you have that little piece of paper that
right.
you lift, and you have the smell in there.
Right.
You know, we're going to do that, and the whole thing, and then there's a lawsuit that came about. A fan from the Northwest, you know, wanted to sue me because he said he had received some in his eyes.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, well, I was outside, I was spraying somebody, and then he said that he received. So Vince, at that time, there was a lot of lawsuits, you know, different guys were being, you know, pursued by fans with lawsuits. So Vince says, look, Rick, you know, we can't take a chance, and they asked me just to put water in there, you know. So he says, if we ever get a lawsuit, then, you know, we'll say, hey, look, it's water, and we have plenty of witness and all that stuff.
All right.
So we changed it.
All right, man. Rick the Model Martel here on OWW Radio. Thanks, man, for coming on with us. It's been a pleasure. It's been absolutely the best. Man. Rick the Model Martel.
Well, I appreciate it, Nick. I appreciate talking with you, and you know, and I just want to say thanks to all the fans all these years supporting me. I really appreciate that because, you know, maybe cliche, but you know, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be there. And so it's great. And again, I enjoyed talking with you, and give my best to Corey.
I sure will. Rick Martel here on OWW Radio. Thanks a lot, Rick. Talk to you later.
Yes, this is Rick the Model Martel, and you are listening to OWW Radio. Yes, of course.
The producers of OWW Radio are Shock, Scott, and Aaron. The executive producer of OWW Radio is Corey Morrow. Brad Dykins is the editor-in-chief of OnlineWorldOfWrestling.com. Jason Detrich is the owner. You can check out Jason at Ferdella.com. Thanks to our guest, the model Rick Martel, everybody. Look for him possibly at the CAC this coming April.